It's out of control. It's a little bit out of control. I make a comment today, just to give you an idea of how out of control it is, about, what was it, Jesse and Colin, like Penn State versus Indiana or something like that. Someone called me an SEC shill. Guys, at some point, look, if you're going to throw out the hate labels, at least make sure I'm talking about the thing that you're labeling. We are jam-packed. We're in Tempe, Arizona, by the way. Arizona State just gives us the entirety of Sun Devil Stadium. The Pope had Mass here before. They had a Super Bowl here. And now our show emanates from here. The Big Three, as we call it in the entertainment business. Thursday night, November 21st, the year of our Lord 2024, proudly brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. I've got upset alerts in my hand. And there are at least 2 games that should be getting primetime treatment that are not getting primetime treatment. And the spreads are under 3, like it wouldn't even be an upset, and I don't think anyone's ready for it. Shark fins just offshore of college football. I've got the playoff debates. Some of them should be, some of them shouldn't be. I'm going to talk about them. I just think someone's going down this weekend and may not even be in the playoff debate as it unfolds in a couple of weeks. Kenny Dillingham is going to join the show. We recorded it less than an hour ago, so nothing's changed in college football in the last hour, right? Well, something's changed down at LSU as it relates to Michigan, but that has nothing to do with Arizona State. I'm going to talk about all that and then some in this show. Live as live can be. You can hear the jets taking off from Sky Harbor just to our west here. It is picture perfect out here. How do people choose to live elsewhere? It's shirt sleeve weather, and the sun's already down. They're watching us in Jacksonville, Florida, Charleston, West Virginia, Spanish Fort, Alabama, and Palm Springs, California. Okay, here we go. Slightest of breezes in the air. My hair is going to be fine. I don't know if everyone's teams are going to be fine this weekend, though. Upset alerts is how I always like to lead off the Thursday show. I like to give you just the old gut feeling. Forget about the model, just the old gut feeling. How we feeling about this? So I want to ask you, Texas A&M, how we feeling? You guys are playing Texas, right? No, you're not. You're playing Auburn this week. So Texas A&M's a playoff contender. Auburn's terrible. What's the line on that, Josh? 10, 12, 14, 2.5. Texas A&M's a 2.5-point favorite. I have got an upset alert concern meter rating of 9 on this game. Marcel Reed, big test for him. Because I got to be honest with you, Auburn, not only do they have a great home field advantage, not only do they have the whole let's package this up as a Super Bowl thing, like Hugh Freeze needs one signature win this year, right? Yeah? I don't know if he'll get it, but he needs it. But not only that, they match up pretty well with Texas A&M. What does Texas A&M have to do? They got to run the ball. And what does Auburn do? Well, they're top 15 in stopping the run. Auburn's offense also, like really, really on the lowest of keys, is not bad. The team's not bad if, like, don't yell yet, because I said if they don't have the self-inflicted stuff, which they've had like every game. But the thing I always caution you about late in the year with these talented teams that are just bad is any given Saturday, they can just not turn the ball over. Any given Saturday, they cannot have the self-inflicted wounds. That's not going to change the fact that they've been a bad team all year. But if A&M plays Auburn Saturday and Auburn doesn't turn the ball over, if they're half decent inside the red zone, Auburn can beat them by double digits because Auburn has, I'm looking at it right now, a top 25 talent roster, which is the difference in an untalented team that is, 4-6 is just bad. A talented team that's 4-6 is bad. They're not going to go to the playoff or anything, but they can bite you and humiliate you on a given Saturday. So I'm going to put a 9 on that one. There's another one happening in Kansas City featuring Colorado and Kansas, and there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of talk about a commitment for Dion in Colorado that I'll get to later in the show, but there's also talk about playoff, and I'm concerned about it. Not because it's not warranted. Oh, absolutely it's warranted. I'm just concerned that people don't realize Colorado's a 2.5-point favorite in this game. This Kansas team reminds me of Florida. Both of them are sub 500. I think both of them are playing at a top 25 level right now, which, again, I cannot stress this clearly enough, does not mean I think they should be in consideration for anything. I am strictly referring to the level of play they're turning in right now, which means if you're Colorado, you better gear up to face what feels like a top 25 opponent on the road Saturday. Now, that's the bad news, kind of. The good news is I think Colorado matches up with Kansas fairly well. Kansas 81st against the pass. Also, when it comes to Colorado, stopping the run, which Kansas really needs to do, Colorado held Utah to 31 yards on the ground last week. Like, that was a surprising number they turned in. That's not something I think most people would have expected. So I've got a 7 on the upset alert concern scale, only because I really respect what Leipold's getting out of those guys. Jalen Daniels has been a lot better, but if I can make him throw the ball to beat me and I'm Colorado, I can live with the results. And I think I'm going to have success against them through the air. So I can live with those results, but still, this is a game you got to keep your eye on, people. Keep your eye on it. Penn State, no one's talking about it. Listen, I'm concerned. 3 taps for concern there. I'm concerned that everyone is just assuming that Penn State's locked into this home playoff spot. They replaced the sod. Jesse, you're all the way back in Nashville. You're like 5 states away from me. You know that you guys put new sod into Beaver Stadium. And you know good and well you're not just doing that for one more game. You're doing that because you think you got a home playoff game coming. And it's better to be prepared than sorry, as Meemaw would always say. Meemaw also said, don't show pictures of yourself resodding your stadium when you still got games to go. Penn State, yeah, she said that, by the way. Penn State, an 11.5-point favorite on the road at, wait for it, Minnesota. Now, what's Minnesota, Josh? They're 6-4. Huh. What? Well, if I were to do nothing more than go back in history and have them make a field goal against North Carolina and have that onside kick not overturned against Michigan, this is an 8-2 team that's in the playoff mix. That doesn't mean anything other than it is reasonable to expect an 8-2 caliber performance, like a top 25 caliber performance from Minnesota Saturday. Also, we have a big scheduling dynamic situation on our hands here, which we seem to keep running into in the Big Ten, but I digress. Penn State's playing their 5th straight game. It's the second leg of back-to-back road games for Penn State. Guess what Minnesota did last week? They sat at home. They did nothing. They're off a bye. So Oregon ran into one of those scheduling dynamic disadvantages at Wisconsin and got out with a win. Could this Penn State game look like that? I am concerned. I've got a 7.5 on it. Minnesota is the second best defense I think that Penn State will have faced this year, behind only Ohio State. Now, Penn State can do one of 2 things. They can mess around and get themselves in quicksand, and if they do, they could either lose this game or it could be bowling shoe ugly, as Jim Ross would say, and they barely escape with a win. Or they could do what they found ways to do a little bit more lately, and that's get off to a fast start, which, I mean, based on their style of play, was once thought to be illegal in Penn State circles. But yes, it is okay. They do allow you to start fast. They allow you to feed Tyler Warren the ball, but with the pair of safeties that Minnesota has, I wonder, is it going to have to be more than just Tyler Warren? And let's be real, man. If Penn State's going to do anything, even if they get past this game, yeah, it's going to have to be more than Tyler Warren. I'm not taking this game for granted. 11.5-point road favorite. I got a 7.5 on the upset alert concern meter. Kentucky at Texas. No. Also, I need to clarify something. Just because you're in this segment on the Thursday show does not mean I'm picking you to be upset. I ran into this with Notre Dame folks last week. You picked Virginia to upset Notre Dame. No, I didn't. Yeah, you did. Show me the proof. And they screenshot, which is the past tense of screenshot, this segment. No one's picking Virginia to beat Notre Dame last week. In fact, I did the entire thing to show you that I didn't expect Virginia to win. I expected them to cover, which they did. Kentucky, I don't even know if they're going to cover here. Here's what I'll say. I've got a 3 on the upset alert concern scale, only because Texas could be looking ahead to A&M a little bit, and also because Kentucky is like dog water awful this year, except that they beat Ole Miss outright. They lost to Tennessee by 7, and they lost to Georgia by 1. And it's like no one even remembers that. Kentucky has played 3 top 10 teams, beat one of them, and lost to the other 2 by 7 and 1. So what are they going to do in Austin? Are they out of gas? They may very well be. It's another week where I guarantee I'll find myself watching Quinn Ewers, watching this Texas offense, and thinking, come on, do something. Come on, take over. Like they did it against Florida, but Florida was never going to be in that game because Lagway was out. Maybe Kentucky won't be in this game, but there's kind of dual themes going on with Texas right now. You go to Arkansas, you play Kentucky. Like, first and foremost, you need to win the game. But also, you want to show something that you could reasonably see copying and pasting into a bigger game, maybe against A&M, maybe in Atlanta, maybe in a playoff situation. Notre Dame against Army. We didn't talk about this Tuesday because I wanted to wait until the Thursday show. A 5. That's what I'm putting on the upset alert concern meter. A 5. Notre Dame's favored by 14.5. This game is in Yankee Stadium. Army needs early scores in this game. Army has not faced anything of note in terms of strength of schedule, which is okay. But that means when you got the number 3 run defense in the country, I'm still going to have to see it. That's all that means. Northern Illinois did it, man. Like, Northern Illinois ground a game to a halt against Notre Dame, and they won it. The thing about that is everybody knows that happened. Notre Dame knows that happened. Marcus Freeman knows that happened. And so because of that, I just don't know that it happens twice. Kenny Chesney once sung a song in that vein, and I just don't think this happens twice. I'm putting a 5 on it because I respect the United States Army, but I do not think they get this done. If they do, you know what? I'll lead the show with it Sunday night if they do. I don't expect it to happen. You know what Meemaw said about expectations, don't you? Oh, no, I hoped you did because I don't. Oh, I had a little itch on the ankle. Okay, Academy Sports and Outdoors brings us the entire show. They bring you the entire show. They make it free of charge. Gelby right now is just wandering around behind the equipment, taking all kind of pictures. We're on the road because Academy allows us to be. And they allow you to take care of all your Christmas shopping. Some people have birthdays in December as well as Christmas. And I don't want to name names, but if you want to shop for said person, Academy Sports and Outdoors is probably where you can do it. And I know a lot of you do not have an Academy in your backyard. That's okay, because you do have the internet. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to watch or listen to the show. So you can go to academy.com, and they take care of you. And, you know, like I always say, unlike some places where you kind of got to hold your nose and patronize the sponsor just because you love the show. Some of you do that, and I appreciate that. We don't have partners like that on this show. These are places that have spots in your lives, whether this show exists or not. They just happen to roll with the show and make it free for you, and we appreciate it. All right, had a whole lot of people the other night who got mad after the playoff selection stuff happened on Tuesday, and then I had our show and I didn't mention something. So, yes, I'm going to go down this road. College football playoff rankings keep coming out. There's a whole lot of debate out there, and I just wanted to address some of this stuff. Like the other night, ESPN has the rankings release. And then you have Booker McFarland there, and McElroy's there, and Reese Davis is there, Joey Galloway's there in studio, and they're just, you know, they're tossing around their thoughts, no different than you would, no different than I would. And the thing about the playoff rankings is everyone wants to have a unique thought, everyone wants to have a unique angle, and sometimes you hit, and sometimes you miss. I got nothing against Joey Galloway, don't know him personally, got nothing against him, not going to take a shot at his character, call him an idiot or anything like that, but he said something the other night that I took great issue with. I think most of you heard it. If you didn't hear it, let me save you the time of looking it up. He suggested that because Indiana was in the spot they were in, and because the ESPN, whatever in the world they call it, prediction machine says that even if Indiana loses this Saturday, they still stand a very high percentage chance of being in the playoff. Joey Galloway said, well, if I were them, I would think about sitting my quarterback. Because we remember what happened to Florida State last year. Remember, Jordan Travis got hurt, and the committee said, even though you're undefeated, you're going to be out. So on the sheer basis of logic, if one didn't know anything else about college football, one could listen to that and say, well, you know, technically he's right. Who cares if you lose this game this Saturday? Who cares if you go to the Big Ten championship game, which is on the line this Saturday? If Indy wins, they go to the Big Ten title game, ironically in Indy. Who cares about all that? You know, if the percentages say you're going to make the playoff, just sit your quarterback. Yeah. You know, to a professional billiards player who has never had passion for college football, has no love of the game, has no appreciation for competition or tradition or whatnot, that would make sense. Joey Galloway is not that. Joey Galloway's played this game at the highest level. So he ought to know better. I got what he was saying. I could not disagree with it. I could not disagree with the sentiment of it, rather, anymore. So, firstly, if Indiana wins Saturday, which they very well could do, they go to the Big Ten title game. Like, that's it. They're done. They go. So that's the first thing that's on the line. But, dude, I don't want to play the I told you so game. I promised you guys when this thing expanded, I was done with it. I'll ride with it. I don't like it. But did we not talk about this? Did I not tell you and get laughed at, by the way, that if we expanded this thing, it would not take long before resting starters was a topic? And I'm going to take you back about 10 years really quick, a little over 10 years now. Remember when the playoff was first invented? We went from the BCS era to the 4-team playoff, and everyone made everything about the playoff. Who's in? That was the marketing campaign for ESPN. And they did that because they had purchased the rights to this thing that was the playoff, and they wanted to market it. And so they did, and boy, did they market it. Like a fire hose to your face every week, they marketed it. And what happened was, in the aggregate, they marketed the playoff at the expense of valuing the regular season. That's not to say they ignored the regular season, but you remember this. It wasn't that long ago. Week 2, random Thursday night game. Coming out of a commercial break, it's 3rd and short, and Boston College is trying to convert against North Carolina, and I got the announcers talking about who's in and advertising the college football playoff, and it was just everything at the expense of the college football playoff. Well, then slowly, you remember what happened? What happened was people started inventing phrases like meaningless game. You know, because once you're not in the playoff race anymore, what does your game really mean? And then they started saying things like meaningless bowl game. Kids didn't say that. The players didn't say that. Adults in the room said it. And the kids had the audacity to listen to the adults. The players listened to the adults. And after a while, you know, your Leonard Fournettes are looking around saying, these folks keep calling these bowl games meaningless. And I got NFL draft consideration to weigh, and I'm playing at LSU, and we're not in the playoff. I'm going to sit out the meaningless bowl game. And everyone gets all pissed off at Leonard Fournette. And I'm looking around saying, but Leonard Fournette's not the one who called it meaningless. He's just listening to people call it meaningless. Well, now we fast forward 10 years, and what do we have? We got an expanded playoff, you know, so all these games will have max importance. And Josh, it won't take away from the value of regular season games. In fact, it'll add more importance to more games. It took less than 1 year for someone to go on national television and suggest that a top 10 team should rest their starting quarterback. Let's be careful how we talk about this stuff, please. Next up, I've got, the forever claim of SEC bias, which I did a lot on the other night, so I'm not going to talk about it a whole lot. I just wanted to point out there's a lot of incongruent logic here. I've been doing a lot of radio hits. We've been talking about this. I've been asked about this a whole lot. I just want to point out that it does not mean that the SEC is a top-to-bottom elite conference this year when someone like me suggests they may deserve as many as 5 teams in the playoff. Because when I say things like that, number one, the season's not over. I don't even know if there are going to be 5 viable candidates. Tennessee could lose to Vanderbilt for all I know. Texas A&M could lose to Texas for all I know. There may not be 5. What I'm saying and have been saying and will continue to say is if the chalk holds, there could be enough deserving teams at the table. But when I've said that, the pushback I've gotten is, dude, the SEC doesn't even have elite teams this year. I know that. I don't even argue with it. I am asking for the logic to be congruent. I'm asking for the standard to be equally applied, because you cannot tell me that the SEC is down without also acknowledging, dude, past the top 3, the Big Ten's kind of shallow this year too. The ACC doesn't even have multiple candidates to spit out. Ditto for the Big 12 in all likelihood. Notre Dame is sitting there in the top 8 and has a home loss to Northern Illinois, which is worse than a loss any of these other SEC teams have. And so you have to point all that out, is what I'm asking. If the Big Ten were pumping this year, if they were rolling, if Miami and FSU and Virginia Tech and Clemson were just star-studded this year, I wouldn't be saying what I'm saying about the SEC. All these SEC teams are flawed, but in an equally calibrated scale, how do they measure up? You really shouldn't even be saying SEC team. You should be saying team. And which schedule did they play? And then how does it stack up? By the way, the SEC schedule I don't want to say I haven't said it at all, but I don't think I've said SEC schedule because I don't know what that is anymore. I've got Missouri playing the lineup of teams they played, and I'm looking at Georgia play the lineup of teams they've played. Those schedules don't even come from the same galaxy, much less the same conference. So saying SEC schedule means next to nothing to me. Like Texas right now is not in the same boat as Georgia. Texas loses next week. In my opinion, Texas very well could be on the outside looking in if they get what they deserve, because Texas will not have enough meat on the bone. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Just the whole SEC thing, man. There's so much emotion in the room. When I talked about that the other week, I said, you guys can disagree with me. Of course, a lot of you will disagree with me. I don't care about that. All I care about is, instead of calling me an idiot, or instead of calling someone an SEC shill, just give me a logic-based rebuttal. Don't respond in hysterics. Don't speak in this like macro emotion-based nonsense. Give me logic-based responses. Give me an argument, even if I disagree with it. Put some meat on the bone of the argument. I have not gotten much of that. I've just gotten, this dude thinks 5 SEC teams could make it. That's just SEC bias. Brother, I work for CBS. We don't even have a contract with the SEC anymore. Like, what are we talking about? Next up, I push the concept of the big lies in college football all the time because I know moments like these are coming. One of the biggest lies in college football is you are what your record says you are. It comes from the NFL, where Bill Parcells once famously said it, and he was right. You can make all the excuses in the world. You can talk about all the tough bounces of the ball, and we did this here, and they did that there, but you are what your record says you are. On Sundays, that's right. On Saturdays, that is not right. And I know some of you just outright get that. I know some of you don't believe it. You think that you are what your record says you are. But there's this other group. It's kind of the middle of the sandwich. There's this other group that kind of sort of nods their head. They say, yeah, I get it. Yeah, there's more to it than just what your record says you are, because strength of schedule, there's such a huge gap, conference to conference, team to team, that we've got to weigh it more smart than they do on Sunday. But then when it comes time to actually do it, you can't help it. Your mind reverts back to, we can't bump Indiana down if they're 11-1. You can't leave them out of the playoff. They're 11-1. My goodness, what more can they do? You can only play the games that you put on your schedule. I know that. But I had a guy earlier today try to play the emotion card, try to say, you can't rob an opportunity from those kids at Indiana. If they lose to Ohio State and they're still 11-1, you can't put a 10-2 team in above them. And I said, of course I can. It would be right to do that. He said, no, that's not right. You're robbing those kids. And I said, no, I'm not. That's not a logic-based rebuttal. What I'm asking is not to use the term rob, not to use the term kids, which implies you're victimizing someone. I want to know, heads up, resume versus resume, proper criteria weighted and applied. Is that 11-1 a more deserving resume than this 10-2? And people who say yes will be saying yes because you believe you are what your record says you are. Because I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but if Indiana loses by 1 or 1,000,000 Saturday, I really don't care. I don't think they got a resume leg to stand on. But if you believe otherwise, you've just bought into the big lie, which we can disagree on, and I still fully respect you, but I do not believe in that. I do not at all. Yeah, it's not Indiana's fault. Their schedule is what it is. But it's not Texas's fault either. It's not anyone else's fault either, is my point. I always hate when people say that. It's not their fault. Their schedule is the way it is. Well, it's absolutely their fault. Their out-of-conference schedule is the way it is. So let's not go that far. But as far as their conference schedule, you're right, but you're also wrong. The ranked wins argument, man. I hate ranked wins. When I'm college football commissioner, I am banning the phrase ranked win. Ranked wins, for a million different reasons, I can't stand them. But the one thing that's happening right now is you'll see it every Tuesday night when that playoff committee releases their latest rankings, and then we're looking at a team's resume and this and that. Ranked wins is a category. Like Illinois snuck into the top 25 this week. So all of a sudden, that's a much more important win for Penn State than it once upon a time was. I don't care if I play you and then a month later you're ranked 26th or 24th. it means the exact same. There's no difference, but yet there is. There's a huge difference on that resume card. Then the other thing that happens is because of the ranked win thing, I am looking right now at the inability for anyone to understand that past the number 20, well, not anyone, there's a group of people that think if you're not in the top 25, 26 through 134 is just equal. You know, so like I happen to think Wisconsin, if you have played them and beaten them, is a fairly good win. I got Wisconsin power rated like 30, 31, 32, something like that. So I think of that as a really quality win. I've got a lot of people telling me you're singling out Indiana and Penn State's record is the exact same. Their resume is the exact same. You could not be more wrong. And they keep saying, well, like USC or Wisconsin, like those wins are any better than the ones Indiana has? They are miles better. Yes, they are. It's no different than if I'm looking at you beat number 18 and I beat number 25. You look at that and you say, oh, there's not a lot of difference there. But if I beat number 18 and you beat number 26, I got a ranked win and you don't. Just the same, I could have a non-ranked win over a team that in reality is like number 28, and you could have a win over a team that in reality is like number 79. I got a way better win than you. There's a group of people that just look at both of those as the same thing. Penn State's resume is markedly better, with a loss, markedly better than Indiana. So I don't want to hear that. And then I got Notre Dame. I haven't personally had a huge problem with Notre Dame. I get the people who do, though, because you've looked at them lose to Northern Illinois. They won't have to play a conference title game. And they've got 4 ranked wins, guys. 4 if they beat Army. If they beat Army, they'll have 4 ranked wins. I understand the rolling of the eyes when you're talking about Notre Dame's 4 ranked wins and their Navy, Army, Louisville, and then Texas A&M. I'm not taking anything away from that. That's legit. But I do get it. There's a lot of debate. I will promise you some of this will sort itself out, but all of it won't. There's going to be supreme controversy a couple of Sundays from this upcoming Sunday. It's unavoidable now, unlike Quick Trip. Quick Trip, actually, no, it's very much like that. It should be unavoidable. It is on this show. If you check out the whole new Saturday tour, Quick Trip unavoidable, because they have fueled this thing all year long. Look at us. We're in Tempe, Arizona. Never been here before, by the way. We're sitting here in Sun Devil Stadium on a Thursday night. Why? Because Quick Trip allows us to be. Because just boom, boom, they fuel it up. Not like we rode a bike all the way out here, but they fuel us up as a show, as a people, as a Pate State people. They fuel us. And they say, go wherever you want to. Give out free gas in the process. I don't know how many thousands of dollars of free gas we've given out. Joe, you guys might want to check on that. Quick Trip Joe, QTJ, as he's known in my phone, has been our hookup all year. We appreciate him, and we appreciate Quick Trip. Where will we be next week? Whomst amongst us knows. But first things first, we got a big game coming up this Saturday here. Day game, too. We can get back home Saturday night. Speaking of that game, we'll take a couple of minutes here, and I got you some best bets coming up in a second, too. And I got Kenny Dillingham on the show tonight, so we're actually far from done. I've also got a couple of Q&A for you, so we got a lot still to get to. BYU, Arizona State. I've been excited for this game for a couple of weeks, and here we are. So we're going to be firsthand. We're going to be sidelined for it. 2 of the most improved teams in the country. Do you realize last year Arizona State was 3-9, BYU was 5-7, and they're sitting here 8-2 and 9-1 respectively right now. I think when I look at this game, BYU needs to do something special. And if you've watched Brigham Young this year, they've won a lot of games, but it hasn't been that there's been this one huge playmaker, there's this one star quarterback. And they've slowed down scoring a little bit. Like, they scored 30-plus in 7 of their first 8 games, and they've been held to 22-13 over the last couple of games. They don't have, like, a takeover guy. Like, you got Scadaboo at running back for Arizona State. You got, like, guys like Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State or Ryan Williams at Alabama. Those are takeover guys. BYU probably doesn't have that, but in the more zoomed out perspective, they've just got a rock-solid team. They've been winning with team football, and they've been winning because they consistently are really good in turnovers. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But they lost to Kansas because of the red zone. last week Kansas went into Provo and beat them because they were inconsistent in the red zone. They've been all year 32nd in red zone scoring, 99th in red zone touchdown percentage, which means they get down here a fair amount and score, but it's normally through the uprights. It's not so much across the goal line, but they play good defense, so it's been okay. This, however, is a playmaker kind of game for Arizona State. I mentioned Scadaboo. He is the number 3 guy in FBS in total yards per game, number 2 leading receiver on this team. And then when you watch him at tailback, and he should have pretty good success, pretty good room to run against BYU, you also need to know Sam Leavitt, the quarterback for Arizona State, that's the guy who was in the process of taking the job, really, during the spring. Like, Jaden Rashada was penciled in as the starter here, and I'm making sure, no one's around. That dude was getting outplayed in the spring, and he realized it, and he left. No ill will, no hard feelings. Like, no one speaks an ill word of Jaden Rashada in this building, but they love Sam Leavitt. And when Rashada transferred, a lot of people outside Tempe freaked out. No one here did. I'm going to talk to Dillingham in a little while about that, but I look at him. He's had 3 touchdowns and 0 picks in 3 straight games. This is the game that he needs to be on, because this is the kind of game where if he performs like that, they will win. It's turnovers, and it's Brigham Young's propensity to force them that I'm really not like concerned about, but I'm a little weary of. Turnovers and red zone success will decide this game. I think home field will have a big factor here. They've sold this place out. It's a hard sellout. There are no tickets available. Every single one of these things has been sold. Colin, let's take a look at what the model thinks. The FanDuel number on this game right now is Arizona State -3.5. The model pretty much agrees. Model's got Arizona State -3. I just think they're scaling up at the right time. And I wonder a little bit about Brigham Young if the gas tank theory is in play here, where every year we see teams that are rolling through like week 9, week 10, and then you realize November is the longest month of the year in college football. We always say that, and you realize, man, they got close, but then they just ran out of gas. I wonder if Brigham Young is that. Not that they get blown out, but I wonder if that's enough to swing this game. I think it will be. I'm going to take Arizona State to win and cover. All right, I opened up the mailbag earlier today and wanted to get to a couple of these before we bring Kenny Dillingham in here. The first one was, one of you asked me just my general thoughts on Texas right now, because Texas is in an interesting spot. Like, Texas, the range of outcome with this team right now is wild. If you think about how uniquely placed they are. So right now, Texas is sitting there, I think they're still top 5. I can't remember off the top of my head what the playoff ranking had them at. But like the potential of Texas winning the conference in their first year in the SEC, oh, it's a huge story. It's a huge story, but you know what else would be a huge story? Would be Texas penciled in all year. They've been either the favorite or co-favorite to win the SEC all year. I believe at FanDuel right now, they're favored to win the SEC, and yet, if they lose next Saturday on the road at A&M, I'm probably going to sit here and tell you, based on their resume, they do not belong in the playoff, which is very weird for Texas, of all teams, to be in a situation where there's kind of an A-B scenario. Either they probably go to the conference championship game, or they just don't make the playoff. That's why I am careful not to say SEC schedule. Because you got teams like Georgia that I think full well could afford to lose 2 games and still have one of the best resumes in the country because of the strength of their schedule. But Texas plays in the same conference. They lost in that scenario their 2 big games. If they lose to Georgia and they lose to A&M, I'd put them out for the same reason I'd put Indiana out. And that's an SEC team, but it just so happens their schedule fell the wrong way, just as Indiana's schedule has fallen the wrong way. Now, the difference with Georgia, or difference with Texas, is they had a shot. They had a couple of shots. And we're speaking in a hypothetical if they lose next weekend, because I saw someone today, they said, Texas's strength of schedule is in the 30s. How can you say they wouldn't belong? Well, it's a very good point, but the counterpoint is, if your strength of schedule is in the 30s, and you're Texas, it's because it's propped up by having Georgia on there and having A&M on there. But if you lost both of those games, like if you lost the big opportunities that make your strength of schedule look halfway decent, what are you standing on? The Arkansas win, the Vanderbilt win, the Michigan win's not worth anything. So what are we really standing on? When I say not worth anything, I mean it's nothing that you're going to hang your hat on. So I think that Texas is one of the most interesting stories right now because they may go win the SEC or they may be out of the playoff. By the way, I think somehow the committee is still going to find a way to put Texas in if they lose next week. It's my opinion that possibly they should be on the outside looking in. I think you'll still be okay. Next up, had a little question about Deion right quick. And trust me, I saw the news on another quarterback a little while ago. I'm going to touch on that in a second. But Tyler hit me and said, with the commitment of Julian Lewis earlier today, do you think Colorado's success is sustainable without Shedeur Sanders? Look, this vibe has changed. Okay, the vibe around Deion in Colorado was once Shedeur's gone, he's gone. I don't think that's the case anymore. And I can tell you that is certainly not the vibe anymore. Now, I don't know if that means people have slowly come around to realizing that Deion's there a little bit longer than you thought he'd be. Or you got guys, it could just be that Deion himself has settled in and decided, maybe I've changed my mind. Maybe I want to be here. It's his story to tell. That's not my story to tell. But if you've missed what Tyler was talking about, Juju Lewis plays in Carrollton. He's a Trojan. Plays in Carrollton, Georgia, and he was committed to USC, quarterback. He decommitted. He committed to Colorado earlier today. It's kind of a proverbial passing of the torch moment, if you will, from Shedeur to Juju Lewis. Now, I wonder about a couple of things here. I wonder if he'll be ready to play as a true freshman. I wonder, if his game is at the level that they could plug and play him. My guess would be no. But you know what? I'm done guessing around Deion because he's proved a lot of people, including me, wrong in a lot of different areas. So maybe they get that. But broader strokes, whether he's ready or not, the sustainability of the program, I think it could be there. I don't look at them now as a two-horse sort of team. I don't look at them like that now. You probably know two players on that team, but they've played good football. That defense is much improved. I think that run game in years to come can improve. It's certainly not something that they ride this year, but they've come in this conference, the Big 12 this year, and they have handled it better than I thought they would. Because the Big 12, it looks like it's easy, because there aren't superpower teams here. You've got a bunch of teams in this conference that are full of fourth and fifth year guys. They're veteran laden, great culture, outposts. And Colorado comes in and they say, okay, well, maybe we'll just go win it anyway. So even after Shedeur Sanders is gone, and even after Travis Hunter is gone, you don't fill that void immediately. But I think Deion can win there past this year. So yes, I'm a believer. Also, before we get to Kenny Dillingham, man, oh man, what an earthquake went off earlier today in the college football world of recruiting. I don't even care if you follow recruiting. This is a big one. This impacts everyone. This was Bryce Underwood, number one player, as far as I'm concerned, number one quarterback, number one player, the most important recruit in this upcoming cycle. Been committed to LSU since January. He decommitted. He is committed to Michigan. I cannot overstate enough how big a deal this is. Bryce Underwood is as big a mortal lock to be a star at the next level as we've seen in quite a while. I'm not going to use the G word, generational. I'm not going to use that word, but he is a total man amongst boys in high school. Been committed to LSU. Everything was contingent on this. You've heard me talk about Brian Kelly, and you've heard me talk about anybody who's having a problem with him down there. They say in the very next sentence, but we'll wait and see what he does once Underwood gets here. That's gone. That's gone. That doesn't mean it's over for Brian Kelly, but as far as it relates to his future being tied to Bryce Underwood being his quarterback, that's gone. And I don't know where they go. This is one I cannot sugarcoat for you. They got some really smart people in that building, running recruiting, running NIL. They know what they're doing, but there is nobody, I don't care how seasoned you are, I don't care how sharp you are, that when they get caught across the jaw with this, doesn't fall down. They may not be knocked out, but LSU's down tonight. And this is happening against the backdrop of a season that's kind of gone off the rails late a little bit. And the season going off the rails was one thing. I'm telling you guys, if you don't follow this granularly, an LSU fan down in Bossier City or Thibodaux or wherever, they're not happy about the season going the way it has gone. But everybody has put their stock in the yeah but. And the yeah but has been, yeah, we're not going to the playoff this year, but we got Bryce Underwood coming in. And now you don't. And it's going to be an uncomfortable December if they can't fill that void, and I don't know how they do it. But I will say this. If Bryce Underwood is not going to be part of your class, there is a healthy reallocation of NIL funds that they will be able to take advantage of. And so they are going to swing. They may go down swinging, but they're going to swing. But, man, Michigan football, the future of that program just changed. I mean, Sharon Moore's future just changed. I don't know how much clearer it can be for you guys. Your future's kind of always been tied to your quarterback, but now more than ever. Your future's tied to your quarterback. You got to go get one. It doesn't matter what your scheme looks like. It doesn't matter what your core principles and tenets are. You can have all that stuff in line and lose if the other guy's got the better quarterback than you. Well, now you got him. You got him, and now Michigan, for the first time in forever, can sell to prospective wide receivers. You can come here and have the best in the country throw to you and distribute the ball to you. That's always been a lie if a Michigan coach told you that before. And now they're being dead serious in their ability to say it. This is the 11th hour that this is hitting LSU in. It sucks. I don't know how else to put it, man. It is not a death blow, but it is a crippling blow for LSU, and it is potentially the beginning of something very special for Michigan. All right, FanDuel, exclusive odds provider of the show. I cannot wait to see how some of these conference championship odds move after this weekend. That's just a little something I'm watching on the side. The Heisman market, I got a little anecdote for you guys depending on how that Heisman thing plays out. I can't share it with you right now. I don't know why people do what I just did. If you're going to say something, say it. I'm sorry. I'll share it with you when the season ends. Hold me to that. Remind me of that. But FanDuel, exclusive odds provider of the show. You look at the board. We'll do Friday Night Lions tomorrow night from a hotel just behind this mountain here. I can walk to the game Saturday from my room. We'll do that live courtesy of FanDuel at LateKickJosh on Instagram. Make sure you're following. But in the meantime, listen to that. I got two more best bets to add here. So on the Ramen Noodle Express this week, we're on Texas Tech minus 3.5. All right. We're on Boston College plus 2.5. I am going to add Kennesaw State plus 8.5. And I'm going to add West Virginia plus 2.5. Are we on? Let's see. No, we got a dog in there. All right. We got 3 dogs and a favorite. 3 dogs and a favorite, not a bad restaurant name idea. I'll get on that. Anyway, make sure you're following on Instagram at LateKickJosh because we will do Friday Night Lions tomorrow night. I'll let you know what time. Just make sure you're following. All right, Kenny Dillingham, about an hour or so ago, just strolled out here, just hanging out, and I said, sit down, man, let's talk. And then Gelby set up the lights and the cameras, and we just got a full conversation here. So I'm going to wrap the show here. I'm going to toss to what we did with Kenny Dillingham. Appreciate you guys so much. I think you'll enjoy this a lot because a lot of you don't know KD, and you need to get to know him. He's going to be around for a while because he's like 34 years old, so he'll be around forever. Here's our talk with him a little while ago. Can you believe this? Kenny Dillingham, Arizona State head coach, joins us. Can you believe that, first off, we're sitting here in late afternoon, shirt sleeve weather. You got BYU coming into town for what is a pivotal Big 12 championship type game. You got the playoffs that people are whispering about. And a couple of years ago, you take over the job and people are like, man, how long is it going to be before we hear about Arizona State again? So you're in the weeds, you're in the bunker right now, but also you can take a breath for a second and say, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, quick second, very quick second, because we have one of the biggest games, in the country. It's the most expensive ticket in the country right now by 3x. I mean, it's $300 to enter our stadium at any seat right now. So this place is fired up for Saturday.
I grew up in the South. I always looked at Arizona State. It's a long way away. I didn't really know where Arizona was on the map, but I always, when I learned a little geography, it's like this place looks like it's got a really big stadium. Weather looks great, confirmed, by the way. A lot of talent, a lot of high school talent in Arizona. I know that because other schools go into Arizona and they're taking kids out to go play elsewhere. Man, what if someone gets it figured out there? And so I've watched it over the years, and now I'm in this business and I know a lot more intimate details. But when you look at the profile of where you guys are, where you guys could be, you know it better than anyone. Like, what can Arizona State be?
Arizona State can be as good as any school in the country. It really can. It's a growing city. so we can continue to grow with it, right? It's still in a college town. The university is a $4.5 billion enterprise. It's not just a university. People just think we're Arizona State University. We're a $4.5 billion enterprise. We're way bigger. Our reach in the real world is way bigger than anybody could imagine for recruits when they actually graduate and get into the real world. And this place, this valley, there was a time, I'm born and raised here. There was a time that it was the Phoenix Suns and it was the Arizona State Sun Devils. And that was it. And that was what you did. On Saturday, you went to Sun Devil games. Throughout the week, you went to Suns games. And you tailgated, and it was everything. And then the city grew. And we became one of the largest cities in the country. And we got pro sports, which is awesome, which is great. But that root of Sun Devil faithful are here. They just want a winner. I mean, this is paradise out here. Winners live here. They retire, they're successful in life, and they move here.
Yeah.
It's paradise. They want a winner. We're winning. We're sold out. And it's going to be one of the best environments in college football. So where can this place be? As good as any place in the country. You just got to get good talent. There's got to be people who say, we want to stay here. Our kids got to say, we want to stay here and do something special here.
When you guys came out of spring ball, as good a grasp as you can have on your team coming out of spring, what did you think you guys were capable of, and then how has it sort of evolved? Like, how much have you learned about this group that you probably couldn't have even known coming out of spring?
Yeah, I felt like, man, we got talent. Like, we're not bad. Like, we have the talent to compete. It was, how are our guys going to handle close games? Are we people that the close game, we smile, we look at each other, you ready to go win the game? Like, you ready to go win this thing? Or are we the type of people who are like, make sure we communicate? No. And the coolest thing is when I heard Sam Levitt, who's a freshman, right, who's leading our team, one of the top quarterbacks in college football, who wants to be here, to tell JT, our wideout, before our last drive in a game, he goes, you ready to go win this thing? Okay. That's when I realized how good we could be. In the spring, I didn't know we had that kind of dog in us.
Yeah.
I learned that in the season.
Well, what's wild is, so I take myself back to Nashville, sitting in our studio in the spring, and I see a headline, and all the preview magazines have a guy listed as your starter, and then I see, breaking news, he's not going to be there anymore, he's entering the portal. And a lot of people freaked out. And then the closer you got to the program, the less freak out you felt. And that's not to speak ill of anyone, but it is to speak pretty highly of like the internal confidence you guys had. I don't think most other people, including maybe even me, I don't think a lot of people knew maybe what Sam Levitt was doing, even in the spring here. And now come into the season, and I think he's just now popping on a lot of people's radars because they've been paying attention to like a few programs all year and a few quarterback names all year. And this dude's got a shot, probably as good a shot as he's had on a national stage this year to do something big this Saturday. That may be when a lot of people see him for the first time. What have you seen from him all year, though? Like, what have you seen that gave you confidence coming out of spring even that we'll be all right?
The competitive nature, like the care level, reminds me of the guys I've coached like Bo Nix and Jordan Travis, and it's just there's an it.
Yeah.
You know when you talk to somebody and you're like, that dude's got it.
Yep.
And you're like, okay, well, he's got it. He can lead. He wants it. He's intelligent. All right, then you watch him in spring ball and you see some freak plays he makes. You're like, okay, this kid cares. He's got it. He's got this thing about him. And then he has all these tools to make it. If we can truly develop this dude, he's got all the stuff you can't coach. So now let's go coach him. And I think it was the exciting part in spring was when you look into his eyes, you're like, he's got it. And you can't coach that. And
yeah.
I've coached guys who are like that. They're playing on Sundays right now. One of them just won, I think, every award known to man last week for the Broncos and Bo Nix. And he's got it here. Sam has it.
When you are putting together a playbook, when you're putting together an offensive game plan, maybe even during spring, like when you're trying to filter out what you probably won't use this season and package up what you will use to fit your personnel, how often do you look around and say, you know, it's players over plays, like we can draw it up on a board, but at the end of the day, we got to give these guys room to actually do what they do. It may not look pretty on a grease board, but that's actually how we're going to win games this fall.
No question. I mean, I'm a high school coach. Going way back to my root, I coached 7 years of high school out here. I had no connection to college football. And when I learned, I coached 8th graders at a park, literally 10 minutes from here, where the lights didn't turn on, and I'd have to turn my truck on to show lights at the street.
Remember the Titans vibe, yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
That was it. We had our coaches, we'd put the lights on. And I say all that because at those levels, you get what you get, and you find a way to get your best players the ball over and over again. You put your best player at quarterback, you snap it to him, you run right, you run left, right? You maybe put him at wideout, throw him a screen. But it's that mindset now with the knowledge of a guy like Coach Arroyo, who's more NFL driven than even I have in my background, and you say, okay, how do we just get our best players the ball as much as possible? And that's why Jordan Tyson, went off last week, almost 200 yards of offense receiving. That's why Cam Scatteraboo, I don't know if he is still, but was leading the country in yards per scrimmage. And it's because at the end of the day, we're going to get our best players the ball. And that's our job as coaches, to get our best players the ball. And I think we do that as good as anybody in the country.
When you guys last week were at Kansas State, I'm at the Georgia-Tennessee game, so I can't watch it live. And I think you guys got a dogfight on your hands. You got an outside shot to go in there and win. And I look at my phone and it's 21-0. And then you're up like 20. You ended up winning 24-14. But I mean, they're trying to play catch up. Like, they're trying to get back in the game. Everybody, when they have like a big season, you're in the middle of one right now, they always have that moment. Like, if there's ever a documentary made or you're speaking to a quarterback club at the end of the year, you always go back to these few moments as saying, hey, this was the turning point. That's when I knew. When you're in that moment, it's heat of battle. Yeah. But like, when you're looking and you're saying, wow, we're in this situation right now, like, what does that feel like? Yeah, I mean, it was just like, holy cow. Like, there's not a word or an expression for it. Like, you're obviously, it's second quarter. Like, the game's not even close to over, right? But it's like, we got a chance. We got a chance. And I'll say this, like, that moment that you're talking about after the UCF game 2 weeks prior, where we played horrible, we found a way to win on special teams, pick six, special teams touchdown, we just found a way to win. And then 35 guys went and hung out together after the game. I was like, we got a chance. Like, we just won a game we shouldn't, in a way we shouldn't, and then 35 kids chose to hang out together at night. And I know that's such a small thing, a little thing, but that tells you the connection of the team is beyond the game. And when your connection is beyond the game, anything can happen. And then the next week, we go out and play our best football game. I don't think that's coincidence. I think that's connection and relationship that's real, that's not fake, that's not just put on a board and said from a coach. It's the players genuinely like and care about each other. Now, if you Google your name, I would imagine something's going to pop up that talks about you being one of the youngest head coaches in college football. Do you feel young? No. You don't feel young at all? I really don't. I've been coaching since I was 17, right? So this is actually my 17th year coaching, which isn't even close to some other guys. But you don't say somebody it's year 17, you're like, oh, that's young, if you actually look at that body of work. I was too unathletic to play, and my high school head coach was like, hey, let's just throw that in the bag. Let's just start coaching, man. Go coach the freshman team. And then 8th graders out here, 15 minutes from here, because I'm born and raised here. So was my wife. My wife danced here. So for me, it was like, yeah, I'm young. I get it. Everybody watching me run thinks I'm old. I'm unathletic. I can't even hoop anymore because I've had too many knee surgeries. So I'm young at heart. I'll say that. In a low-key way, or maybe you're just real about it, that's a blessing, though. What if you were on the borderline? What if you could kind of play? What if you would have tried to dabble and you wouldn't have gotten into coaching until like 28 years old? So in a way, your DNA became a blessing, did it not? 100%. I tore my ACL going into my senior year of high school, tried to play without my ACL. I was already 5'9", unathletic, and ran a 4.8. So now I'm 5'9", unathletic, and run a 5 flat. And my coach is like, you're done, son. If you want to coach, let's start you. And that coach today is our special teams coordinator right now, Charlie Regal. It's like when you think about where you go, when you think about the stops you've made, you've been everywhere from Auburn to Oregon to Memphis to Florida State. Now you're here. How often during a typical week or a month or a season do you find yourself just drawn on random things that you experienced here, random things that this guy did there, and it just fires like a memory would for a normal person? Constantly. Constantly. Every single situation that happens, head coaches, your job is to put out fires, manage people, right? And every single day it's like, this happened here, he did this. Like, our leadership council method is from Gus Malzahn. The way we practice, pre-practice, is from Dan Lanning. The periods 3 through 8 are from Mike Norvell. Period 2 is from Dan Lanning, Kirby Smart, Nick Saban. It's constantly pulling
from, the Rolodex of things that I've learned throughout working with really, really successful people.
So then the other part of that is you've got things that you feel like are in your wheelhouse, and then you may have things that, might as well be Portuguese to you. So a lot of head coaches don't have a background in sports science, but yet you're responsible with hiring people who are tasked with carrying that out for you. Strength and conditioning, how you recover, like the analytical side, all these things. How do you figure, I know it's an ongoing process, but like how do you figure out, not only here's how I actually want that done, but now I got to interview people for those jobs. And those people know more about this job than I do, but like ultimately I'm going to have to answer for the results and whether we win or lose.
That's the hardest part. Hardest part is when you don't know the nuances of what you're hiring. And I was told this from a guy named Gus Esposito, who's been a very successful businessman. He goes, you don't need to know everything to know people. He said, when you're hiring, you're not hiring somebody how intelligent they are, how smart they are. If they pass certain criteria to get in your room, they should have some knowledge on a subject and have the intelligence. You're hiring the person to fit your culture and your program more than you're hiring what they can actually produce. Because if they don't fit your culture and your program, it doesn't matter what they know. So in those settings, it was always about, is this person, our three pillars are be a good person, make good decisions, have more fun working harder than anybody in the country. When I get on and I meet you, do I feel like you're a good person, right? Do I feel like you're somebody who's going to make good decisions, right? Are you dressed? How are you dressed for this interview? Does it matter to you? And then are you smiling? Or is this a miserable? Because if it's miserable, you got no chance. I want people who are multipliers in our program. I don't care who you are. I want you to make the people around you better. So all of those hires were all about those three requirements. It wasn't as much about what they knew, because I didn't know all that.
Yeah.
I had to rely on people that interview this guy, interview this guy, interview this guy. And then once we got him in the interview, it was, do you fit what we're trying to do here? Do you fit the overall culture of the program?
When you walk through some of these buildings, it feels like very militaristic. When you walk through some other buildings, it's loose. I think if you walked through some of the more buttoned up, really, really stuffy buildings, especially the ones that are successful, then you walk through one where a lot of people feel loose, they're having a good time, people would misconstrue that as weakness.
Yes.
How do you have that vibe, but then still go toe-to-toe and even beat the folks who really look buttoned up and they're all marching in a line, and it's, like I said, kind of militaristic? It's obvious that that's not the end-all be-all, because if it was, then your way couldn't win.
I think you have to be yourself. I think kids want to follow people and be in a program that's genuine. So if my personality was that,
yeah,
then I better recruit to that. I better sign guys that want that, right? And build a program like that. I am not like that. If I walked around like that, the guys would laugh at me because that's not me, right? I'm the guy who's going to tap you on the shoulder and then go the same way and say, gotcha, because you're going to look over the other shoulder, right? I'm the guy who's going to crack a joke. And at the same time, you better be 5 minutes early. That's just the minimum standard. It's not hard to be early. It's not hard to do what you're supposed to do. That's why we're going to have more fun working harder than anyone in the country. And when it comes to that, it's funny. We had a kid who transferred here who we had a recruit walking around, and I was telling him, have more fun working harder. That's one of our pillars. And he goes, hey, don't forget about that working harder part. That real out here. We work twice as hard as my last school. And I think it's just, you have to be genuine to who you are and then recruit to your culture. You can't just say this guy's talented, we're going to force this guy into what we do. You've got to recruit to your personality. You've got to recruit to the people that you like, that you genuinely like. We don't sign guys I don't like. I better walk into the building, see 120 kids that I enjoy.
Yeah.
Because I'm around them all the time. They're family. They're literally around me just as much as my family.
So if I put a normal person in your position, you get them to that point, but then I swap you out for a normal person, I think they'd get overwhelmed by the external stuff that comes along with winning. When you start winning, a lot more people pay attention to you. You sell a lot more tickets. You get a lot more requests. I come here and ask you, hey, before your date tonight with your wife, can you sit down with me for about 20 or 30 minutes? I think a normal person would focus on everything but the task at hand. You're not ignoring any of the external, but how big a challenge has it been, maybe not for you, but you keeping your building focused on the task at hand, or is it an afterthought, everyone's focused on what they need to?
I think it is a challenge. When you're not used to success, right? Any change is difficult. So when you go from, okay, we're 3-9, we're one of the worst programs in college football. Let's call a spade a spade. Like, how are they ever going to win? They have NCAA sanctions. They can't go to a bowl game last year. All this negative, this dark cloud of they can never recover. And then all of a sudden it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Boom. To say that that's not hard for your guys is real. Now the challenge is, hopefully you've poured enough into, do you really care what other people think? Because if you constantly care what other people think, whether it's football or life, you're never going to be happy. You're going to have a great day, then you're going to have a bad day, then you're going to have a great hour and a miserable hour. You better learn to accept who you are, embrace who you are, love who you are, and just double down on you. And whoever likes you, and whoever doesn't, and you walk around as the happiest person on earth, and those people who are making other people trying to twist and turn into what other people want, they're going to be miserable. And you're going to walk around with half the people loving you, half the people hating you, and you still don't care. And I think that's hopefully the vision that we've set for these guys is, who cares? Just go be the best version of us and repeat.
Kenny Dillingham, man, we appreciate it.
Thank
you so much.
I appreciate it.
Brigham Young, Arizona State. We'll be on the sidelines for this one this Saturday. Check it out. And we appreciate you guys watching in general. We'll be back in Nashville Sunday night, reacting to it all. For Sir Kenny here, for myself, for Colin and Jesse back in Nashville, for Gelby right behind the camera here, I'm Josh Pate. Take care, have a great weekend, and God bless.